Hi, it's Dia. Today I'm going to be using Prismacolor pencils and I'm going to do a real-time version of the crystals that I colored the other day for my Prismacolor pencil review. So first things first, this picture is going to be from an up-and-coming coloring book. I don't quite have it named yet, so I'm just going to leave that in the vapor for now. And I'm sorry that this top part is cut off, but it's the top points of the crystals, and the colors that I used there were pink and deco pink, and then I moved on relatively quickly to the center part, which is lavender and lilac. Now, it's okay actually because that was pretty straight up coloring. As you can see, I'm not really doing anything fancy. I'm just filling in the area, and I kind of went a little bit darker at the bottom, although you can't see that, and I'm sorry. It's a little bit darker. I left it a little bit lighter at the top. Now this is a really cool color. Let's see, where is that? It's the lightest purple. It's called Grade Lavender, and I didn't realize that it was so gray, so I decided I didn't want to use it in this part. Put it down and went back to the lilac. You can see, whoop, there's the adjustment. As you can see on the right-hand corner, it's a little bit darker, and I decided that I was going to make that side darker because I was like toying with a reflection idea in my head. But you'll see as I go through this, that idea morphed several times. The top point on the right side of that crystal is dioxazine purple hue, and it's a very dark shadowy purple. And I thought I was going to do the whole side once again, and then I changed my mind and I went to violet. Now you can see after the first two pinky colors, I left a white line in the center. Well, not the center, but between the left two and the right one side of the crystal. I thought it would look really interesting to have that white line separate everything. And then about halfway through it, I realized I probably could have filled it all in and then gone over it with either a Posca or a Signo gel pen, but that's okay. It kind of helped me practice like very clean, very straight lines. And I thought the results were pretty interesting. As you can see, these lines are very detail-y. The white lines in the center are very thin, and the pencils held their point enough for me to not have to sharpen every 2 seconds, because I know that's a concern about Prismacolors, but it was definitely okay. I started out with the same violet that I used at the bottom of that last crystal piece on the right side, and then I switched over to lilac. And I realized that about this point that these pencils blend really nicely. Oh, here's a little bit of interesting information that one of the first coloring books ever made was a Buster Brown was a Buster Brown book. So it featured the character called Buster Brown, and I also learned that many coloring books were used as almost advertisements for things that people were selling back in the day. Oh, now here I made a mistake. This is cobalt blue hue, and I think I was so used to using hero pencils that, that I didn't realize it was going to come out that blue. So that being said, these pencils are pretty accurate to what the color is on the barrel. Now, I goofed, but I try to make the best of it. So what I'm doing here is making that sharp point where well, you can't see it right now, but there's another crystal that sort of crosses in front of it. I'm trying to make those lines very clean. And the area that's the furthest down is the darkest. And I kind of left it, I didn't blend it and I didn't make it any darker because I kind of wanted to see what it was going to turn into. This color is light aqua. And I know this crystal probably doesn't exist anywhere in the world. You know, all the sides have different colors, but I was trying to feature a lot of the colors in this review. Well, not this review, but the other review that I was doing originally at a faster speed. So the crystal's not exactly realistic, but it does feature a lot of the Prismacolors. Now this part right here is pretty straightforward coloring. Once again, I'm leaving those spaces in between the facets or the faces of the crystal. I'm going a little bit lighter as I get closer to the bottom of the crystal. And at this point, I can't remember if I changed my mind or I kept that whole face light aqua. I was planning my next video earlier today, and I'm excited to talk about it, but I don't want to give away too much about it. So I'm dying to tell you guys some of the tips and hints that I found, but I can tell you one of the videos that I will be releasing next week talks about how creative people think a little bit differently from the rest of the people in the world. So I think anybody who's going to color is creative, and I think they'll find this interesting because I really did. Ooh, I love this color. This is Chartreuse. These colors were so interesting to me because even the light colors, I consider Chartreuse. This is pretty light. I could still barely press with these Prismacolors, and that color was true and clear, and I quickly started liking these pencils. So once again, I'm pressing a little bit harder near the top, and then making it lighter as I get to the bottom. Now on this side, I thought it would be interesting to just add some pink at the bottom to make it look like a nice reflection, or even an interesting transparency. This is Deco Pink, and I added a little bit into the Chartreuse, but not too much because I didn't want to muddy up the colors. And I'm not, and I wasn't when I was doing this video familiar with them at all, so I didn't want to push my luck and then have to do the whole thing over again. Another video I'm going to do in the future is about color and how it influences us. So if you have a favorite color or even a favorite color in this Prismacolor set, please tell me below and tell me why you like it. You can even tell me if it makes you feel a certain way or how it's influenced you. I would love to hear your opinions. I'm intensifying that Deco Pink a little bit with my favorite color from when I was a kid, hot pink. Now I'm going back to the light aqua. Doing more just filling in some certain areas and just basic coloring. Ooh, going back to the mistake area with lilac. And I'm actually going over that mistake for the first time. And it almost ended up to be more like a shadow than a mistake, so I was happy about that. Once again, back to the light aqua. And I do this a lot when I color. Don't feel like you have to finish, meaning any area. If something's calling to you and maybe you want to go from the area that you're coloring to an adjacent area or an area that's underneath, go for it, because it might be your subconscious telling you or asking you, "Ooh, will that color look nice there?" Okay, now what I was doing here was taking gray green light, and I was just trying to add a very light reflective look on the bottom of that light aqua. And then I started to blend because it looked really nice together. It's a super light color. Now, I took the Prismacolor Colorless blender, and I wanted to see how that worked over everything. Now, when you use this color, it was very interesting to me because all the other colors that I had used up to that point were very smooth, and this felt very scratchy going over the top. Now, it did blend, but I don't know if I was crazy about it, and I don't know if I was using it correctly because I haven't used one before. Now on this area, you can see it really worked. It intensified that color so much. So I went right down to the next area. And as you can see also, it made that violet color much more intense. And then I went to the lilac, blended that in, and blended it right into the mistake area. It felt like a lot more work than I had been used to with a blender. I'm used to using a polychromos white to blend, and that always felt like I kind of whipped through everything. And this felt like a little more work. Not that that's bad, because as you know, colored pencils are kind of hard to deal with to begin with. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just that you have to take care. You have to take your time. Oop, back to violet over the top of that colorless blender, and you can really see that no, that wasn't violet. I'm sorry, lilac. And you can see that it allowed that lilac to show up more. So anyway, I was saying colored pencil is a tough medium, and you have to take your time. Well, you don't have to do anything. You can do it at any speed you like, but to me, colored pencils take a long time for me to get the results that I want. Now on this side, I used lavender, and I'm being very careful at the edges where any of the faces meet, because I know I'm going to be leaving that white line, and I don't want it to be messy. Now right about here, I realized that there were some parts of the image that were going to be in front of the crystal, and I had drawn that very, very lightly. So rather than goofing it, I decided I would go in with the green. I used Chartreuse first, and I at least wanted to go over the areas that were going to be grass. So I didn't go over them with the crystal, because then it would be too late and I wouldn't be able to have any grass. It's just more interesting when things are multidimensional. And you really don't have to worry about this in a coloring book because everything is basically outlined in, well, for the most part, black. So for the grass, I used Chartreuse, like I said, apple green, and grass green. I'm using apple green here to fill in a shamrock, or a clover, I should say. And I wasn't really trying to make that area perfect, meaning the whole foreground. The biggest part of the review for me was to just get used to the pencils and to make those crystals look as nice as I possibly could. But then, me being me, I had to draw something in the front because it just looked too empty with just two crystals on a page. So all I really did with that grass was do the light color first, which was Chartreuse, and I formed the blades of grass. And there's a little leaf on the right-hand side and a clover on the left. And then there's also a plant on the left in the background, but I don't think you can see it yet. So all I did really was outline them and fill them in very, very lightly with the Chartreuse, and then outline a bit with the apple green. And then later on I used grass green for detail and depth. When I outlined that clover first, that was another mistake. I was kind of unhappy with that. It looked a little cartoonish, but I was okay with it. I figured I would fuss around with it and make it as unobtrusive as possible. I figured I would put some more grass around it and a couple of shadows, and it ended up okay, but wasn't my favorite thing that I ever colored. Now here I was adding details to that blade of grass. I made some little lines, like very, very detail-y, and I quickly changed my mind because I figured it was going to take a very long time to do every blade of grass that way. So I figured I would just make all of the grass very simple and once again focus on those crystals. Now here's that other little, it's basically a leaf. Now sometimes I make the center or the veins in a leaf lighter, and sometimes I make them darker. It depends. And sometimes in any given picture, if there's a lot of leaves, I do both because it's very interesting. Also, I pretty much stuck with 3 colors here. You don't have to. Grass comes in all different colors. You can go from greens to yellows, even some honey colors. Grass is in, a perpetual state of growing and dying. So there'll be some brown in there, some wheat colors. Oop. Now I'm going back to lavender. Now I felt safe going back to that crystal, especially at the bottom, because I wasn't going to go over those grassy areas like I was talking about before. They were outlined and I could see where they were and I could properly avoid them. Now on the other side of that face of the crystal, I used hot pink. Now I left an area in the center a little bit lighter on purpose. I was actually thinking of leaving it pure white, like a pure white reflection, and then I ended up changing my mind and using, I think, Deco Pink. We'll find out in a minute. I did that actually a couple times. In another area, I left the center or a side lighter, and then I ended up filling it in. And then I figured at the end I would go over it with either acrylic paint or a gel pen. And then I ended up using both because the Signo gel pen wouldn't work over the top of the Prismacolors. And I don't know if that's a normal thing or it was just being glitchy at that moment, or finally my Signo is running out of ink after I don't know how long. What I'm coloring in right now was my interpretation of maybe a chipped corner. So I used Deco Pink and then some hot pink with Deco Pink over it for the top part. I still left that little tiny white line separating those two areas. So that area, that little tiny triangle right now, I wanted it darker on the bottom, and then once again Deco Pink at the top. Back to my new favorite color, light aqua. A lot of those crystals go from light to dark or dark to light. I should say a lot of the areas in those crystals go from dark to light or light to dark. And that's actually, I don't know if you would call it a technique, but that's considered chiaroscuro in 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 the art world. So that's if an area goes from either shadow to light or light to shadow. And I don't know how to spell it. Actually, now I have to look it up. I'll be right back. Okay, so it's spelled Chiaroscuro. And the actual definition is the treatment of light and shade in drawing and painting, or an effect of contrasted light and shadow created by light falling unevenly or from a particular direction on something. Whew. Okay. Now, that was Deco Pink, like I said. Oh, now here I decided to give that grade Lavender another whirl. I think I had it in my head over here that it would kind of be cool. Like there would be one part of the front face of that crystal that was sort of not in direct light. And then as I used it, I kind of got a little deflated because it was a little too gray. I still love the color, but I just don't think I used it in the best spot. If you use it separately on a piece of paper, there's definitely a violet, but I think the other colors in these crystals were so vibrant and so clear that this little mix of gray and lavender, it wasn't quite working. So I changed my mind And well, it was too late to change my mind though. So I went in with Deco Pink. And I liked it a little bit better. And looking at it even now, I probably could have gone over the whole area because both of those colors were so light. Maybe a darker purple. I could have used Parma Violet, but I didn't. I left it, and I did end up liking it. And I try to leave the mistakes in also because I feel like I know it's kind of cliche, but I do. I learned from every single one of them. The other thing I learned from mistakes is some things that I call mistakes, other people really like. So I'm putting my hands up in the air like, oh, you know, what can you do? Like, you can only go by what you like. So, what's the saying? One man's something is another man's treasure. So, yeah, so I left it, and you'll have to tell me. Tell me in the comments below, if you would be so kind, if you actually like that color there at the end of this video. And I would love to know what you think. And now here I'm using Lavender. And it's funny because now it looks so bright next to the very soft Deco Pink and the very shady gray Lavender. Right about now, I was very grateful that I had at least put some indications of the grass because I probably would have gone over it. I've done that before in images, even in images that I was working on for a coloring book. And I don't know if you've ever done that or done something like that where you're working on something, especially when you're in the ink phase of it. A pencil's okay because you can erase it, but oh my gosh, you get to the ink phase and you make a mistake. And not that it's the end of the world. It is a picture after all, but oh, that feeling. Now, once again, being very careful for those white edges, I took Parma Violet, and I'm doing the very skinny outer panel to that crystal. I kind of went in right away pretty dark and pretty heavy on this one, so there wasn't a whole lot of room to add anything else. I went in and kind of burnished, and I knew that I liked it already because I had gone over that area a little bit on the other crystal. I ended up really liking this color, and I don't know if you remember this, but even the purples in the Crayola box when you were a kid, they felt really nice to color with, and I think that different inks do have different feels and different textures, and I think I have a thing for the purple. Now I'm being much more careful with the darker color, and I probably should be just as careful with the lighter color too, because every little stroke that you do does matter, but it's much harder to correct a darker color. Now in the middle of doing this panel, I had to sharpen that pencil because it did get to the point where I couldn't get enough detail. So I stopped and I sharpened, and all was well. Now I'm going over that other crystal area once again, that purpley area, I should say. And that Parma is kind of like it's right in the middle. It's like a perfect medium, almost bright, but slightly mysterious purple. I just love that color. These crystals were nice to color because I had free reign. They could, they can be anything, meaning any color, any shape. And I'm happy to say that there is a page in my up-and-coming book that features crystals and other shiny, lovely things. Up, back to lavender. And as you can see here, I was also pushing pretty hard because I didn't think that I was going to go in with any other color. And then, whoop, I changed my mind, as you'll see in a second. At the very tip, I went in with I think that was Parma Violet again. Not a big difference, but just a slight detail on top. And now I took the white, and I wanted to see how the white the basic white pencil was going to blend. And I instantly liked it better than the Colorless blender. It was creamier, it was smoother. And you know, when you use white, it does, I've said this before, it does this like strange magical thing. It makes it darker or more intense, and yet it mutes it out at the same time. So many times after I go over with a white pencil, in the past it had been polychromos, I would go in and put a glaze over the top. You can almost use the side of the pencil or not even a very sharp point, and you can bring that color back to its original intensity. So you can see it's interesting. You go over with the white, and it does make it, you know, obviously blended together more and more intense and yet muted. Mysterious and magical. I love colored pencils. So it looks like I'm randomly kind of, you know, just going from one spot to another, but I'm really not. I start in a lighter area, and then I will go to a darker version of that same. So you see that I went from the light pink now to a darker lavender because there might be a little bit of the color left, and then I went to an even darker purple. Now it's fine if you want to take some of that color and put it somewhere else, but you can see it went from pink, lavender, purple to purple. You have to be careful because if you look, there's a little tiny bit left. So you could see the pencil just go off the screen, so I probably wiped it off from going from the dark purple over to the light aqua. I didn't want any of that purple on the aqua, so I wiped it off. Now I was going to leave that white, and I don't know, you know, I look at it now, maybe I should have, but I didn't. And then I went in with the Deco Pink, and then I was going to leave the center white. So as you can see, I had many different ideas, and I'm not quite a fly by the seat of my pants artist because I do have an idea of what I want it to look like, and I take some pencils out first. But as I go along, things change, and sometimes you make a mistake, so you have to kind of go with it. And sometimes I completely change my mind because the color isn't exactly what I thought it would be, or in the case of using a new set like this one, I had no idea what it was going to be like at all. So, kind of an adventure. Here's a little plant that I had added last minute. It's almost a fern. Just very simple, little botanical. It's got about 5 leaves. I don't know if it exists in the real world, but I thought it would be a nice balance in the picture. So I used the Chartreuse once again. And then the apple green. And I didn't know how detaily I was going to end up doing the grass or any of these plants. I just kind of wanted them to be sort of, half visible in the background. But then they became a little bit more important because I thought the color contrast was nice. So I ended up focusing on them a bit. Nothing huge. Once again, Chartreuse, apple green. You can see there's the lighter vein in the center. And I had drawn other veins sprouting out from the center vein, but then decided against it. So I just went over them with the darker green. Now in the hero set, if you use that light almost neon green yellow and you go over it with a darker green, it's too late. You have to leave it. It's pretty interesting. I think there's enough wax or filler in it that it just makes it so it's actually kind of a good trick. So you can draw all the detaily little lighter veins that you want and then go right over it with the top of a darker color. And those lighter veins stand out. I tried that here. That was not the case. You can go right over the top of the lighter color and it basically disappears. Or at least gets very covered. Now I'm just fussing around with a darker green. Which one was that? I think that was grass green, just for some depth. And now I just wanted to add some details to the first little bunny. Now I had in my head that I wanted to use beige, or in this case it was ginger root for the first bunny, and then the bunny peeking around the back of the crystal on the right, I wanted to make him gray, and I think I used 10% gray. Yeah, it was 10% cool gray. So what I'm doing here is just very, very quickly shading the first bunny. And then I put Deco Pink in his ears, and then Hot Pink in, nope, that wasn't Hot Pink. That was just pink in the base area of the ear, which was a little more intense. These bunnies are so tiny. And this was another moment that I realized that the pencils do lose their point a bit quicker than I'm used to. It wasn't the end of the world. I accomplished what I set out to do, and it actually came out cute. But I didn't do the fine details with this pencil, partially for time's sake for the video, and partially just because I'm just not used to this set yet. Now I'm pondering. I thought for 2 seconds, should I make the bunnies the same color? Nope. And then I went in and I got the 10% cool gray. And then I basically gave him the same treatment. I outlined his ears, outlined his little head. He's got two little paws that are like under his chin going like, oh! So I just filled in that area, and I think there's only one little foot there. And then I decided on both of them for the shadows, I would use my favorite antique drafting pencil because the lead is super hard and I can get it to such a sharp point, and that point stays and stays and stays. Up, there's the pencil. So right now I'm giving him all his details. These bunnies are pretty simple. Eyes, nose, smiley face, or some other basic expression. Now, this guy got deco pink and hot pink ears. The hot pink just because he's a little more vibrant, and the cool gray was a little bit too nondescript for me, so I wanted a little bit of a bright pop for him. Now he gets the same details. As for the shadows, I make the area at the base of the ears a little bit darker, the area underneath his chin a little bit darker, underneath his belly, bottoms of his feet, and where his arms connect to his body. And then I very, very carefully blend so it just doesn't look like lines. I think I'm going to also do a video about shadows and shading and light, because it's such an important part of art to begin with. Any kind of art, whether it's coloring or painting, it's all about light and shadow. I'm just putting a little bit of a shadow around them. And I was going to leave it that way. And it probably would have been fine, but I decided to add a little bit more shading just to make the crystals stand out a little bit more and the bunnies stand out a little bit more because they are so light. So you can see I'm kind of using the side of the pencil. And then I did end up going in with a blender stick and very softly muting out those lines a bit. I'm not quite sure if I left that in the video or not, but we'll find out in a second. Oh, I'm adding a little bit of shadow at the base of the crystals also, just to make them stand out. Going in with more green. I only used a few greens on this whole picture. I used Chartreuse, apple green, moss green, and I think for the dark area, it was grass green. Now I'm just taking that drafting pencil again, and I'm just making that area a little bit darker so you can see the bunnies a little bit more. Now here's where I took the Signo gel pen, and whoop, I try to start it up. Try it again. Nope. You could see a couple little lines there, but it wasn't working like it normally does. Oop, I took it off. Or I tried to take it off. I went right back over the top of it. And it seemed like it worked fine. I didn't know if that was going to work or not. So since I just couldn't get the Signo to work, I took a very, very fine Princeton paintbrush, and I used some acrylic paint, Neopak by Jacquard, and it worked fine. I had to cut the Neopak a little bit with water. It was so thick. I think I had it for way too long and I hadn't used it for a while, so I mixed it with some water, and you can see right here that it did end up working. So I used that same paint, and I also added some little tiny dots to indicate reflections or possibly light in the distance. Oh, I also added some of those lines on the Parma Violet on the right. And I'm glad I ended up doing the crystals, because they helped me to see how beautiful the colors were in that Prismacolor set, and they were actually very fun to do. Oh, and I did end up making a white line between those first two pink colors that I colored at the very top of the first crystal on the left, and I think you'll be able to see it at the picture at the end. And there's those two lines in the Parma Violet. So that's about it for the Prismacolor crystals. They're done, and I want to thank you for joining me. And if you like this video, I hope you give me a like or even a share. And if you want to see more art and coloring tips, I hope you hit the subscribe button below, along with the little bell below it. This way you're notified and you won't miss a thing. So once again, I want to thank you, and I just want to tell you that I appreciate every one of you, and I will see you soon, and I'll see you next time. So bye-bye.